There's something you do almost every day that's costing you more than you realize. Someone says something, a comment, a tone, a look that lands wrong, and before you even take a breath, you've already reacted. The words leave your mouth before your mind catches up. The text gets sent before your thumb even hesitates. The emotion floods your face before you have a single second to choose what it shows. And in that moment, that fraction of a second where your whole body responds before your brain finishes processing, you hand over something you can never get back that easily. Your power. Not the loud kind, not the kind people talk about in boardrooms or on stages. The quiet kind. The kind that lives in the space between what happens to you and what you do about it. And you've been giving it away for years. To people who don't deserve it. To situations that won't matter in a week. To words that were designed to pull you out of yourself. And every single time you take the bait, every time you match someone's energy instead of choosing your own, you shrink. Not visibly, not in a way anyone else would notice, but inside, in the place where your sense of self is supposed to live, something gets thinner, something gets louder, and you walk away from the interaction wondering why you feel so hollow, so drained, so unlike the person you actually want to be. That tightness you feel after a confrontation, that burning replay at 2 a.m. where you keep rewording what you should have said. That's not strength. That's not passion. That's your nervous system running a program you never agreed to. And until you see it clearly, it will keep running you. Here's the thing about reacting that nobody explains to you when you're young. Reacting feels like power. It feels like standing up for yourself. It feels like fire, like backbone, like you're not the kind of person who just sits there and takes it. And that feeling is intoxicating. Because in the moment, reaction gives you the illusion of control. You said the sharp thing. You clapped back. You matched their energy. You showed them. But here's what actually happened. You didn't choose that response. It chose you. It was automatic, reflexive, pulled out of you by someone else's behavior, which means they set the terms and you followed. That's not power. That's a puppet with better dialogue. Real power. The kind that changes rooms. The kind that makes people reconsider their approach before they even open their mouth. That doesn't come from how fast you respond. It comes from whether you respond at all. And if you do, it comes from the fact that the response was chosen, not triggered. And here's where it gets deeper. Most people walk through life in a constant state of reactivity they mistake for being alive. They think feeling everything intensely, responding to every provocation, engaging with every slight, is a sign of authenticity. I'm just real, they say. I don't hold back. But what they're actually saying is, I have no filter between what I feel and what I do. My emotions run my mouth. My wounds run my decisions. And I've dressed that up as honesty because the alternative, sitting with the discomfort long enough to actually choose, terrifies me. Because that's the part nobody wants to admit. Reacting is easy. It requires nothing from you. It's gravity. You get pushed and you fall. But not reacting, creating a space between the stimulus and the response, holding yourself still when every cell in your body is screaming for you to explode or defend or attack. That requires something most people never build. It requires an inner authority that isn't rattled by external chaos. And you don't get that overnight. You get it by failing at it 100 times and choosing to practice it on the 101st. Think about the last time someone tried to provoke you. Maybe it was subtle. A passive-aggressive comment at dinner. A coworker who questioned your competence in front of others. A text message that said so little but meant so much. And think about what happened inside you. The heat, the acceleration, the way your thoughts immediately started drafting a response before the moment had even finished unfolding. Your body was already in war mode, shoulders tight, jaw clenched, chest rising faster than it should. And in that state, you made a choice. Except it didn't feel like a choice. It felt like necessity. like survival. Like if you didn't respond right now, with force, with precision, with enough sharpness to match theirs, you would lose something. Respect, ground, face. But what did you actually lose by reacting? Think about that honestly. Did you gain respect? Or did you just escalate the tension? Did you hold your ground? Or did you let someone else's energy dictate the entire shape of your evening? Did you save face? Or did you show every person in that room exactly how easy it is to pull you off center? And that's the part that stings. Because the truth is, when you react instantly, you don't look strong. You look controllable. You look like someone who can be moved with a sentence, rearranged with a look, destabilized with a tone. And the people who do this to you, whether they know it consciously or not, they learn the pattern. They learn exactly which buttons to push. They learn the map of your triggers, and they use it. Not always maliciously, sometimes just carelessly. But the result is the same. You become predictable. And predictable is the opposite of powerful. Now here's something that might sound strange, but stay with it. The most powerful people you've ever encountered, the ones who made you feel something just by being in the room, they weren't the loudest. They weren't the ones with the quickest comebacks or the sharpest insults. They were the ones who didn't flinch. The ones who could sit in an uncomfortable silence without rushing to fill it. The ones who heard something provocative, and instead of detonating, they paused. They tilted their heads slightly. They let the words land. And then, from a place so still it made the air feel different, they either responded with something devastating in its calmness, or they didn't respond at all. And that silence, that measured, intentional, unhurried silence, it did more damage to the other person's confidence than any argument ever could. Because when you don't react, you send a message that most people aren't prepared to receive. The message is, you don't control me. My peace is not up for negotiation. What you just said, what you just did, it landed on me, and I felt it. But it didn't move me. And that terrifies people. It terrifies the ones who rely on your reaction to feel significant. It terrifies the ones who provoke you, because your response is the only way they know how to feel powerful themselves. When you take that away, when you simply refuse to participate in someone else's chaos, you don't just protect your energy, you expose theirs. You make them sit in the mess they just created, alone, without your participation to justify it. And most people cannot handle that. But let's be honest, this is not about becoming cold. It's not about suppression. It's not about smiling through abuse, or pretending things don't hurt, or building a wall so thick that nothing gets in. That's not power either. That's a different kind of prison. The kind where you're safe, but suffocating. Where nothing can hurt you because nothing can reach you. And eventually, that wall doesn't just keep pain out, it keeps everything out. Love, connection, vulnerability, joy. All of it gets blocked by the same armor you built to protect yourself. What I'm talking about is something far more nuanced than suppression. It's selection. It's the ability to feel the full weight of a moment, the anger, the hurt, the frustration, all of it, and still choose what gets your energy. Not because you're unbothered, not because you're above it, but because you finally learned that not everything that pulls at you deserves a piece of you. And that distinction, between suppression and selection, that's where the real transformation lives. Suppression says, I'm going to pretend this doesn't affect me. Selection says, this affects me. I feel it. And I'm choosing not to give it a reaction because the reaction would cost me more than the situation is worth. One is denial. The other is discipline. And the distance between the two is everything. Let me ask you something, and don't just skim past this. How much of your life have you spent cleaning up messes that your reactions created? Not the original problem, not the thing that happened to you, but the aftermath of how you responded to it. The relationship that could have been repaired if you hadn't said that thing you can never take back. The opportunity that slipped away because you reacted out of pride when the moment called for patience. The friendship that slowly dissolved because you matched pettiness with pettiness instead of rising above it. The night you lost to a spiral that started with one comment you could have let go, but didn't. If you added it all up, every hour spent replaying, regretting, repairing damage that your own reaction caused, how many months of your life would that be? How many years? And here's the part most people aren't ready to hear. The thing you reacted to usually wasn't even about you. The comment that sent you spiraling? That was someone else's insecurity wearing your name. The tone that felt like disrespect? That was someone drowning in their own stress and you just happened to be nearby. The criticism that felt personal? That was a projection from someone who hasn't done a fraction of the internal work you've done. Most of what triggers you has almost nothing to do with you. It's noise. It's other people's unprocessed pain leaking out sideways. And every time you react to it as if it's a verdict on your worth, you absorb a wound that was never yours to carry. And that's not even the real shift. The real shift is this. When you stop reacting to everything, you don't just protect yourself from external chaos. You start hearing yourself for the first time. Not the version of you that's performing. Not the version that's constantly managing other people's perceptions. The real one. The one underneath all the noise. Because reaction is loud. It drowns out intuition. It drowns out clarity. It drowns out that quiet inner voice that actually knows what you want, what you need, and what you should do next. When you're constantly in reactive mode, you can't hear that voice. It gets buried under the adrenaline, the overthinking, the emotional hangovers from conflicts that didn't need to exist. But when you create space, even a few seconds of it, between what happens and how you respond, something opens up. A channel. A frequency you forgot existed. And on that frequency, you start receiving the kind of guidance that doesn't come from your ego or your fear. It comes from somewhere deeper, somewhere steadier, somewhere that has never once been wrong when you actually listened to it. You know the feeling. You've had those moments, rare maybe, but you've had them, where you almost reacted. You almost sent the message. You almost said the thing. But something stopped you. Something made you pause. And in that pause, a different response emerged. One that was cleaner, truer, more aligned with who you're actually trying to become. And afterward, you felt something you rarely feel after a conflict. You felt whole. Not victorious, not righteous. Whole. Like you kept a piece of yourself that you're usually willing to sacrifice. That feeling, that wholeness, that's what it feels like to own your own power. Not to wield it, not to perform it, to own it, quietly, unshakably, without needing anyone else to see it for it to be real. Think about water for a second. Not a tidal wave, not a flood, just water, a river. It meets a rock and it doesn't slam into it with everything it has, trying to prove it's stronger. It doesn't scream at the rock. It doesn't write a paragraph in its notes app about the rock. It moves around it, slowly, patiently, without wasting a single drop of energy on a fight it doesn't need to win. And over time, over enough time, it reshapes the rock entirely. Not through force, through persistence, through the quiet, relentless refusal to be stopped by something that isn't going anywhere. That's you. That's what you become when you stop reacting and start moving with intention. You become something that can't be stopped. Not because you're louder or faster or sharper, but because you're consistent in a way that reactive people will never be. Because every ounce of energy they waste on fighting, you invest in building. Every hour they lose to arguments and replays and emotional spirals, you spend in clarity, in creation, in forward motion so quiet that no one hears it until they see the results. And by then, it's too late. You're already somewhere they can't reach. Not because you left them behind, but because you stopped letting their noise set your pace. So here's what I want you to take from this. Not as a rule, not as a strategy, but as an invitation to try something different starting now. The next time something pulls at you, a comment, a text, a situation that makes your blood rise, don't respond yet. Not in 5 seconds. Not in 5 minutes. Give it 5 hours if you can. Give it a night. Let the initial wave crash without riding it. Let the emotion be there without it becoming an action. Feel the heat and let it cool without building a fire from it. And notice what happens. Notice the version of you that emerges when the noise settles. Notice how different that person's response is from the one your adrenaline was drafting 30 seconds after the trigger. Notice the clarity, the calm, the almost eerie steadiness that shows up when you give yourself permission to not react immediately. That person, the one on the other side of the pause, that's the most powerful version of you. Not because they have all the answers, but because they're no longer controlled by things that don't deserve the keys. You don't have to fight everything. You don't have to address every slight. You don't have to prove to every person who doubts you that they're wrong. Some battles dissolve the moment you refuse to show up for them. Some people lose their power over you the instant you stop giving them a reaction to feed on. And some version of peace you've been chasing for years is already waiting for you on the other side of one simple practice. The practice of doing nothing when everything in you wants to do something. Not forever. Not as avoidance. But long enough to choose instead of react. Long enough to remember who you are when no one is provoking you. Long enough to realize that the less you react, the more of yourself you keep. And the more of yourself you keep, the less anyone can take. That's not weakness. That's the quietest, most terrifying kind of strength there is. If something in this hit different, if you felt that shift even for a second, drop the word "still" in the comments. Not for me, not for the algorithm, for you. A reminder that your stillness is not your softness, it's your sharpest edge. And if you want more conversations like this, no noise, no performance, just the kind of honesty that actually stays with you after you close the app, subscribe. I'll be here. See you in the next one.